Welcome to this explainer. We're jumping right into something absolutely crucial today, the ethical responsibilities of data systems engineers. We're looking at a text that's, widely respected in the tech industry, but we're zeroing in on a specific chapter that takes a totally different approach to what it actually means to build scalable systems. So instead of just obsessing over pure performance metrics, we're looking at the real-world impact. Honestly, if you design, build, or even just interact with modern data systems, this perspective is incredibly thought-provoking. It might just fundamentally change how you view your everyday work. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's dive into this text, Designing Data-Intensive Applications. Now, the vast bulk of this massive book tackles the hardcore mechanics of distributed systems, right? But chapter 14, which is titled Doing the Right Thing, challenges us to look way beyond the technical architecture. We're moving past the everyday buzzwords, scalability, throughput, latency, and we're focusing entirely on the profound human impact of data architecture. It really asks us to take a step back and examine the actual, tangible, real-world consequences of the systems we spend our days building.
There's a line from the text that literally stops you in your tracks. It says, "In our attempts to make software eat the world, we have built the greatest mass surveillance infrastructure ever seen." Wow, right? I mean, it forces us to realize we aren't just writing code in a vacuum here. We're actively constructing environments that monitor and track human behavior on an unprecedented global scale. It's a really sobering thought. It shifts data engineering from this purely mathematical, objective discipline into something that demands a really earnest, hard look at the reality of modern tech. Which brings us to this incredibly stark question. Are we building tools, or are we building algorithmic prisons? Now, an algorithmic prison, as the source material describes it, is when automated systems systematically and arbitrarily exclude a person from participating in society. Think about being denied housing, or loans, or a job without any proof of guilt and with basically zero chance to appeal. Just imagine a faulty background check algorithm flagging you by mistake, and suddenly you can't rent an apartment anywhere. And there's no human you can call to fix it. We really have to ask ourselves what side of that line door systems fall on.
The absolutely crucial point here is that we have to constantly humanize the abstraction. Datasets are inherently about people. It's so easy for engineers, right? You're looking at millions of rows in a database, and you just see numbers, strings, query optimization metrics. It's so easy to forget what those rows actually represent. But every single piece of that data corresponds to a real, living human being who deserves dignity. When we process data, we're actually making decisions about people's lives, their interests, and their core identities. It's never just data.
So, to navigate this, the authors totally reframe how we view ethics in tech. It's not just some tedious legal hurdle or a compliance checklist that you just hand off to the legal department. No, ethics is a participatory and iterative process of reflection. It requires active, ongoing dialogue with the people involved, and crucially, taking accountability for the results. You can't just deploy an algorithm into the wild and wash your hands of the consequences. It really requires a strong culture of industry self-regulation, where engineering teams actively evaluate the human impact before a single line of code ever hits production. And the urgency of that accountability, well, it becomes super obvious when we look at how decision-making has evolved over time. In traditional software, humans explicitly specify the rules for decisions. If there's a bias, it's explicitly coded in there, and it can be traced. But with machine learning and predictive analytics, the rules are inferred from opaque historical data. The authors highlight this very dangerous industry delusion, this belief that algorithms are somehow inherently impartial. But in reality, if the historical data carries a systematic bias, the algorithm doesn't eliminate it, it learns it codifies it, and it actually amplifies that bias. Which leads us directly into the terrifying reality of self-reinforcing feedback loops. Let's walk through this algorithmic downward spiral based on the text. Imagine a perfectly good worker misses a bill due to sheer misfortune. Okay, that triggers a lower credit score. And because of that completely opaque score, they're rejected for employment by an automated hiring filter. Joblessness then pushes them toward poverty, which, you guessed it, further worsens their credit score. So who is accountable when an opaque algorithm systematically ruins a person's life in this kind of infinite, inescapable loop? To really understand our role in this whole thing, the source material offers a fascinating semantic swap regarding how we talk about user tracking. If we take standard corporate speak, something like our data-driven organization collects real-time streams, and we just replace the word data with surveillance, the reality shifts completely. Try saying our surveillance-driven organization uses advanced analytics to derive insights. It instantly exposes the true nature of modern tracking, doesn't it?
When a user's activity is tracked merely to build profiles for advertisers, the relationship becomes totally asymmetrical, and it firmly crosses that line from being a service into being surveillance. Now, companies often try to justify this by claiming the users gave consent. But let's actually break down the strict European legal requirements under the GDPR for what constitutes meaningful consent. It has to be freely given, specific, unambiguous, and easy to refuse without detriment. That last point, that is huge. If you decline tracking, you shouldn't be locked out of the core service. But the modern tech industry frequently fails this standard. When you're forced to agree to a massive, completely opaque privacy policy just to participate in modern society, well, that's simply not an equitable exchange. Which fundamentally brings us to how we define privacy in the first place. A lot of people kind of think privacy just means hiding things or that it only really matters if you have something to hide. But fundamentally, privacy is a decision right. It's the freedom and the agency to choose exactly what you reveal and to whom you reveal it. When tech companies implement mass tracking through ubiquitous surveillance, they're essentially transferring this decision right straight from the individual over to the corporation. It completely strips the user of their basic autonomy. Now, what's really interesting here is how this completely flips a classic tech startup mantra right on its head. I mean, we've all heard the saying that data is the new oil, right? But the authors warn us that hoarding behavioral data, what's often called data exhaust, is actually incredibly dangerous. They argue it should really be viewed as a toxic asset or hazardous material or even the new uranium. It is undeniably powerful, yes, for sure, but it is amazingly dangerous to store, to handle, and to maintain. So why exactly is it like uranium? Well, because of the severe risks involved. Retaining unnecessary data is just a massive liability. If you hoard it, you make yourself vulnerable to cybercriminal breaches, insider leaks, or even coercion by hostile intelligence services. And furthermore, think about this. If your company goes bankrupt, all that deeply personal data is just another asset that gets sold off to the highest bidder. You absolutely have to consider these risks regardless of the current political environment, because let's face it, databases almost always outlast political regimes. The authors connect the dots here with a really profound historical analogy. Think back to the Industrial Revolution. Rapid technological growth led to literal air and water pollution and some pretty severe physical exploitation. But eventually, society woke up. People demanded environmental laws and labor legislation. Today, in the information age, our equivalent challenges are data pollution, algorithmic prisons, and the massive exploitation of privacy. Just as we needed legal frameworks and safeguards back then, we urgently need robust digital legislation right now to protect basic human rights in a digital world. Let's look at how this builds into an immediate, super practical solution for systems engineers. It's called the principle of data minimization. Simply put, this means you only collect what is explicitly needed for the service, and you purge it the absolute second it's no longer necessary. After all, data you don't have is data that cannot be leaked, stolen, or abused. This principle directly opposes the traditional big data philosophy of just limitless hoarding just in case the data might be useful later on. It forces us to be intentional. Ubiquitous surveillance is not inevitable. We absolutely can stop it, but it requires a massive culture shift. We have to stop viewing users as just metrics to optimize and really start treating them as humans who deserve agency. So the ultimate question for anyone watching this explainer is this. Knowing the ethical, the legal, and the profound human implications of the data systems we build, what will you do to stop the surveillance? Thank you so much for joining me, and I really hope this gives you plenty to think about the next time you design a data system.